So initially, I was always so sure of the fact that rushing a sorority would never be for me. So now that I'm in the midst of it, I definitely have had moments of regret, or at least reconsideration. I've wondered why, you know, this has to be as stressful as it needs to be.
This is something I definitely don't know if I can recommend to everyone. I think one of the first reasons I can start off with for it being so hard is the socialization part. I have anxiety, and I think that many of these large groups and gatherings of people are not necessarily considerate of introverts and nervous people and things like that. So I have been getting very overwhelmed, and it's hard when it seems like a lot of the people are just enjoying their time and I'm struggling.
Rush was definitely interesting at the start. To be honest, I didn't really like it because you only talk to somebody for, you know, 5 minutes or so because the are really short. It was definitely worth the whole thing because I've met some of my best friends that I'll be friends with my entire life.
I'm Dr. Sarah Olivo.
And I'm Dr. Liz Seidler, and you're listening to College is Fine, Everything's Fine.
All right, we're back for the 2024-2025 school year. Liz, I would say it's good to see you, but I saw you earlier today. I'll tell everybody, Liz very graciously helped me host a webinar, which we can share parts of with this audience. We'll repost some of it here for you in a little while, but it was earlier in the day, and I just got to say we looked brighter and happier. And for those of you who can't see, maybe we'll do a show on TikTok. I did try to do a Liz wave, a little Liz curl. It's so sad here down here, and you got like 5 still going. I've got my one little sad hanger on. So, but it's good to see you and kind of just starting in my day like a little Liz sandwich.
I know. Well, I still think your hair looks
Aw,
great.
thanks.
And I'm trying to dress like a college student with a sweatshirt and leggings and crew length socks because I've been told higher socks or ankle socks are no bueno.
Crew
So,
length.
um,
Okay, good to know.
I feel ready to tackle this really important topic that a lot of college students are thinking about around this time of
Yes,
year.
and we are talking about, is it worth rushing? And we realize that you're either in the thick of it already or it's not coming till later in the semester. So for those of you who are in the thick of it already, you've already decided to rush or not, probably at this point. And if you are in it, and a lot of the people we've talked to are, you still might be wondering, is rush worth it? So we thought that we would take you through a few things that we hear and just some perspectives to consider as you're going through this process, because it's long, it's a marathon. Whether you enjoy it or not, you're probably tired and overwhelmed. So we just wanted to kind of send you guys out some tips and some support and a little encouragement.
Yeah, I think we really want people to find their wise mind about, is this important to me in terms of, is it going to enhance my college experience? And I think it could be really scary and daunting. Just the word
Yeah.
rush, I think a lot of it, like, a lot to unpack, and it's different at every university. And of course, we're not going to have a lot of time to get into all those details, but we can at least kind of talk a little bit about what are we hearing from college students. We'll actually hear a little bit in this episode from actual college students, so you can have some, areas to consider when you're making your decision-making
Yeah,
tree.
no, exactly. So I think that, there's so many different ways we could go about talking about Greek life. And we realize we're only scratching the surface here. We are talking pretty specifically about the rush process, but involved in that is the decision to rush or not to rush. So obviously there's that piece to it. And we think it's important to consider what the perceptions are often of what rush is like and some of the realities that people face once they're there. I have found, and by the way, I think it's worth us both disclosing, I rushed. I was the rush chair of my sorority. And that gets, yes, I have so many different reactions to that. Some people are like, oh, that's so great. And other people, especially in our psychology field, for instance, in grad school, said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize basically that you were a bad person, right? So there you go. The range of assumptions about what this is
Right.
that I've experienced. And I was like, well, I didn't realize I was a bad person either. Okay, that's news. No, they were teasing, I think. What do you find are the most common perceptions, and then maybe some of the biggest reality checks?
Yeah. Well, let me just preface this. I went to a Jesuit school, and the Jesuits have decided that Greek life is not
Mm,
okay on their
it's for
campuses.
heathens.
I and what compared to my friends from high school that were other schools, I remember feeling so relieved because I was so anxious about this popularity
Mm-hmm.
contest that I was going to have to like present my best self and then also choose. I think a lot of people don't realize it's a two-way evaluation. I think a lot of times one of the things I think that happens is people think it's a one-way evaluation. And therefore, sometimes they're not really thinking about fit and is the sorority or fraternity a good fit. So I say this because I'm like relieved and it actually gives me anxiety as a therapist when my patients are going through the rush process because I know how challenging it can
Mm-hmm.
be and
Mm-hmm.
exciting. I think the most common perception is that it's a social competition. And I think that's what I hear a
Yeah.
lot now, right? Like, I'm not cool enough. I'll never get into the sorority. This is like a geeky frat. Like all the cool guys are in this one
Yeah.
frat, like just a lot of judgments.
Right. I mean, by definition, these are categories, even though it's a club and they get labels and assumptions are made about the group overall. And some of those assumptions can be true. I do think that it is a time ripe for comparisons. So
Yes.
I don't know. I found that some people go in, all gung ho. It's been part of their family forever. They're ready for it, and it's kind of what they expected, and they, it's sort of smooth sailing. I think other people go in expecting that and are quite disappointed, or it's different from what their friends or their parents experienced. I think that there's a lot of other people and pressures deciding whether you should or shouldn't. And so it just becomes this like, this assumption I'm either the kind of person who rushes or I'm the kind of person who doesn't.
Right.
I think you'll
Right.
find in our tips that we're going to say all of the above, right, are really normal. And it's okay to go in expecting one thing and then to realize, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is for me, or to second guess the process, or to be happily surprised that it's not as bad as you think. It's sort of like there's
Right.
almost any way you can shake it out. So, one of the things too we hear a lot, and you already alluded to this, Liz, is the idea of I'm not meant for it. You heard some of the people, describing their experience said, I'm an introvert, so woof, this is tougher for me. Or I'm not quote unquote cool enough. All these labels.
I think on the one hand, these organizations promote socialization, right? There are a lot of social commitments that are expected, from my understanding, and potential consequences when you don't attend some of
Oh,
these
yeah.
social engagements. So, um, if I was heading into that as an introvert, I would feel really overwhelmed by the prospect of having to commit a lot of my time and energy to being around people. I also think sometimes that's magnified. Maybe some people become really black and white about it, that they might not realize that the types of social experiences might be something that they benefit from as an introvert. It doesn't have to be seen as this daunting, overwhelming expectation. So, but I do think this is like where like do your
Yeah.
research a little bit, and talk to other people who've gone through the process and really get to know these organizations.
I do really like the idea of taking stock. And so you go in, you probably have heard, this is the sorority or fraternity to be in, or everybody from this town does this. And okay, sure, there might be reasons for that, but you want to be a bit more scientific in your decision making and say, okay, let me pause for a second. This is 4 years of my life. And I want to make sure that this fits kind of who I am and want to be. And fits the mold of what I want to have happen in my college experience. And I also think that there are plenty of clubs that can provide social opportunities that don't have to do with rush. And I think that there are a lot of sororities and fraternities that do a better balance, right, between different philanthropy and just having it be a social scene. And some people just really like having, I think that's one of the biggest benefits that people say is it's kind of nice to have the social structure. I
Right.
know that there's a plan, but one of the things I think, regardless of kind of whether you quote unquote fit the mold or not, is that rush is a very particular part of this, and it's not necessarily like this forever. It is a moment in time. Maybe it's a week, maybe
Right.
it's a month. It is a lot. And I think it's a time that does really test limits. And one of those limits might be, hey, the limit of my own kind of personality type or what I think is appropriate, or kind of going past my comfort zone in some way. It's probably going to test some of that. It's a time,
Mhm.
it's an extreme time, for better and for worse.
And that's where sometimes, and again, every school is different. I'm working with somebody who's pretty introverted and is like on the fence about rushing, but they don't usually allow sophomores in and they don't have a winter rush. So I'm like, kind of like, really push yourself and just
Yeah.
try, right? Like, see what happens. And ultimately, it ends up not being a good fit for you in the long term. Um, you don't have to be an active member in the organization any
Mm-hmm.
longer. But I think those worry thoughts about, am I the type of person who rushes, really get in the way for
Yeah.
people, right? Just because I maybe don't like to party as much as other people, or whatever the worry thought is. I think it's important to let those go, if particularly, and I think this can be helpful for introverts. I don't know what you think, Laura, having structured social time where you're not initiating a lot of plans and they are kind of built into your
Mm-hmm.
schedule. I really do think can be helpful for introverts, and not just introverts, people who struggle with anxiety. Let's say we've been in social
Yeah.
situations. It takes the planning and the initiation, which is usually the hardest part for
Right.
people.
Or I'll talk to people sometimes who are just, they're like, I don't have time to catch up, or I feel like I'm going to lose friends because I'm not good at texting back, or I kind of lose track. And I'm like, all right, well, here's a way. There is that structure to it. So you're never going to, if you are on the fence, you're never going to know for sure if it's worth your time unless you try it. And that'll then help you confirm or disconfirm what those assumptions are. All right. So the other part we talked about, you said rush. It's extreme. The word in and of itself says that. So unless you are the biggest extrovert ever, just to be clear, introverts tend to have social situations, whether they enjoy them or not, drain their energy, their sort of social battery. Extroverts get more energy from it. So there are people who might be going out and this is just giving them more and more energy. It's like, whereas other people, all this stuff is sort of like their kryptonite. I was in that category. I like talking to people, but I remember going home and rushing and putting my head on my bed and covering it so my roommates wouldn't talk to me because I was so tired. I was just done. So the social burnout is real for most people. They find that they're feeling overwhelmed. And I think that we need to think about this social burnout just like any other burnout. Pay attention to it. This is a little different because some of the aspects of it aren't always in people's control. You're told to come to this thing, or hey, last minute a schedule shift has changed and you need to put something off in order to sort of still be part of the group or show your commitment. And not to stereotype, I do know that fraternities oftentimes are even more so, like willing to let you
Yeah.
fail a class to show your commitment because you're needing to do the laundry of the senior members. So I do think it's a time too to really say to yourself, all right, what do I need to put into place so that I can just at least gather more resources because I will be socially burnt out. Where can I give
Yeah.
myself breaks in other ways? And B, can I make sure that I'm not putting something in place that is going to cause a long-term impact on my grades or my
Right.
well-being?
I do think that viewing it as a temporary process and being able to think about, in 5 years from now, would I regret not doing this? I don't know anyone who's graduated and was part of Greek life and stayed in it that
Right.
regrets it. I do know that most people that are in that bucket said rush was
Yeah.
challenging. Like, I don't think anyone would say it was like the easiest process, but I think most people would say it was worth it if they found an organization that was a good fit for
Mm-hmm.
them. But I agree too. It's like you don't want all the wheels to fall off in your first 2 months of school because of these
Right.
commitments. You really have to do some problem solving to figure out how can I prioritize this because I'm going to be forced
Yeah.
to, while also attending to these other things like my sleep, grades, classes,
Yeah,
etc.
it might be a time where you have to sprinkle that in when you can, kind of catch as catch can.
Yeah.
Take that nap, if you get a break or if there's an extracurricular thing that you can get out of that's not part of rush, let that go without concern or worry. If you have friends from home who are texting you and you aren't able to text back, it's okay.
Yeah.
They'll be there when rush is over. So just try to kind of edge out some of the extra as much as you can because it is more time and give yourself that break. All right, last but not least, although this is a harder, kind of longer topic, is the toll now versus the benefits later. And we've talked about this, we've hinted at it. But if you think about, does this experience overall, right? You're in rush and you're starting to think, is it right for me? Should I continue? And you said something I thought was really kind of a key thing, which is the people who did it and then stayed in it felt like it was worth it, which tells me, and I know many people who did it who said, I did it. It was a nice thing for a time. And then I quit, right? I deactivated or I was not as much of an active member. And there are various ways to do that without much drama. By the time people tend to do that, it's because so many people have broadened outside of this one particular group in terms of their social circle, or they're starting to think about next steps like jobs. So it's not always going to be as intense for you as it is those first few years. You're going to have to expand unless you plan on joining the philanthropic national board. Sorority and fraternity life won't stay such a central focus. So the toll now, so there's time, there's money, and there's the emotional health that you have to go through. We don't talk a lot about the financial toll that a lot of students have to think through, but the truth is that sororities and fraternities are expensive. And it could be something where there's a sense of pressure to do it, knowing that it's testing the financial boundaries of your budget or your family's budget. How do you navigate that? There's also the time cost. We've talked a bit about the reduction in study time. So I just think that, yes, on the one hand, we're saying this is crazy week, but I do think that this is a time to pull back a little bit and remind yourself of past self, current self, and future self.
Right. I think this is, as we're talking about, like, there's so many things in life, right, that have this like really big hurdle in the beginning. And then you look back on it and you're like, oh my gosh, that was so worth it. And whether it's this being part of Greek life, which I think is true, I've seen this, networking opportunities, alumni opportunities, it's a real sense of pride, community that a lot of people carry through the rest of their lives. But you're not really seeing that when you're, you know, being told what you need to wear every single day, or you're doing laundry, or you're running errands for
Yeah.
people. It's hard to kind of see like what value is this going to have for me, but it's that short term, long term. Can I kind of zoom out from like current, view and think about what else is going to be added into the picture later on in my college
Mhm.
career? Are those things that are worthwhile to
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
Applied?
And you actually said this. I'm just the one who wrote it down for our little outline here. But is this something that's going to enhance my college experience? It's going to be hard to know that at first. We know that there are ways that people have found a lot of benefit from it. And of course, the people who you are hearing from in our sound clips are people who've decided to rush or decided to stick with it. And so that's a bit of a bias. I will say so many people choose not to. And guess what? They're still thriving. They have, they found a way to have a space on campus. They invested more time in the sports teams that were there or a different community. And I think that they felt just as enriched. And so that's something to remember, that for a lot of colleges, Greek life can be the loudest, the most obvious and most prominent. It might have the longest history. So it's going to be the most obvious in some ways. And universities are very dedicated to making sure that every student has a space. And so it might just be looking a little deeper to find something that isn't as obvious or loud, but that feels more authentic and more like who you are as a person, because it can take something to, with these kind of classifications, if your sense of self-worth is wrapped up in this process too closely, I think that you're going to suffer for whether you're on the quote unquote good or the bad side of that. If your sense of self-worth is tied to the right sorority and you get in, then you're going to continue to try to, and that's reinforcing, you're going to continue to try throughout your life to always join whatever version of the popular sorority is happening at work or in graduate school or at your internship. And it's just, this is a 4 to 5 year time of your life. There needs to be other ways that you find a sense of self.
I really appreciate that. I know it's really hard to be a freshman rushing and to be really confident in yourself. But I do think asking yourself the question, like, what value do I have to this organization? Like, what can I kind of offer to them? And I think if you are confident that you have something to offer, that will help you not kind of tie it up in terms of your self-worth and really feel like, okay, like, just like you don't want to go to a college just based upon its prestige, right? That you want to go somewhere that's a good fit. And same thing with this process of rushing. But I agree, the all or nothing thinking. If my college experience, if this doesn't go the way that I expect it, like I'm not going to have a good experience. It's definitely not the case, even if it feels like that during this rushing process.
Right. So I think the overall thought about this is the shine, whether it's the right kind of shine and it's shining on you, or it's not shining on you and you feel upset about that, that goes away and it's short-lived, and you're going to find some other way to have to navigate your sense of value. So might as well start now. Why wait?
Right.
My personal experience and when I felt like I had matured past that label was when actually as rush chair, which I kind of was a reluctant, long story job. I wasn't someone who was a shoo-in for that necessarily. I wasn't campaigning. And when I got to the meeting of all the rush chairs, I realized that I was friends with most of the people at the table. And what I mean by that is to say that everybody had sort of shaken off their club name and label, and everyone had sort of reintegrated into each other's lives and found some of the friendships that they had before Rush and connected to those initial really organic, communities or those initial organic friendships. So I do think that that is a nice trajectory that you want to have, which is, okay, have some fun, let it be a positive in your life. And if it starts to feel like it's a label that's kind of holding you back, really let it expand. That's a sign of growth. That is something I think about a lot, where I was just like, oh, I feel like I'm a grown-up now. Like, well, we're glad we solved all your rush problems.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
If I can find a picture of me during rush, I will share.
Please, rush chair. Sound off in the comments if you knew Sarah during her appointment.
People are going to be like, who? What? See, no one's going to remember.
A lot of people that I have become acquainted with or that I considered friends were a part of the social clubs, and they say it's just so much fun, and the genuine sisterhood that they built from it is something that they have never regretted, even over their experience with the rush process and pledge week and everything that comes with that. So I decided to just do it, and I'm very excited to potentially become an active and to, actually start participating as a active member. in this club. So I definitely would tell my freshman year self, do it earlier. I wish I would have done it earlier so that I can benefit of being a part of the club for longer. The balance of school and work has probably been the hardest. Balancing studying with, late nights up till 10 or 11 o'clock at night was very difficult. But I feel like now that I've gotten past that, I'm only feeling positive and optimistic about the rest of this week, and I definitely wouldn't change anything else or ask for anything differently.
One of the other things I can say that's very hard for me, and it is different with every club, is my sense of freedom, because we have to wear certain clothes all the time, walk with people to class, attend activities late at night, so I can't do what I want with my nighttime. And that's just been hard because this whole night process came out of nowhere, and I love my structure, my schedules, and my routine. So I feel like my day-to-day routine being completely shifted was also very difficult for me, but thank God this is only a week. I do think overall in the end it will definitely be worth it, just because there's a lot of good personalities that I'm gonna be more excited to get to know better. I'm extremely sleep deprived and have very much been questioning if this is something I want to go forward with. Yeah, don't know if I recommend this for everyone. The final ending process should hopefully be worth it.
I do think it takes a very certain and specific type of person and personality to fully benefit off like this kind of experience. And I think you are really going to have to want it more than anything else, because it is very tempting to just drop out and say, you know what, this is too much. This is getting too hard. I'm over it. I'm sick of it. So yes, do it. Do it. If you're thinking about it, do it.
Thank you to our guests for sharing their stories and their advice. This podcast is for college students, and we want input by college students, so please reach out by text, email, or voice memo to collegesfinepodcast@gmail.com or 929-500-2231. Tell us your story, give us tips on topics you'd like to hear, or give us feedback about an episode.
Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Colleges Fine Podcast for episode announcements and resources. And last but not least, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast. Every hit of that plus button helps us keep going.